world's greatest detective will always be just a detective. Written by Badfakesmiles. I have this outstanding reputation of entering a crime scene and coming out with an almost 98% accurate story on how shit went down. The only time someone mentions my name is when they've completely given up. It's the pass option to the question, what happened? They call me a genius. I call myself a cheat. You see, I have a gift. I've never been the best in explaining it, so I've memorized a spiel. When an event that involves intense emotions or actions occurs in an area, it leaves a mark on the objects around it. Kind of like a farmer branding their cattle. I can access those memories with a single touch. Brooke, what the hell you leaning on that tree for? Get your ass in here. My partner Jonah nagged me from inside the house. I lifted the yellow tape and entered the living room. A metallic scent greeted me as soon as I stepped forward. TV was shattered on the ground. Red dots were splattered across the white sofa, and the center table was nowhere near the center anymore. Instead, a rusty axe on top of a dried pool of blood took its place as the main attraction. Everybody out. Mr. Brooke and I will be working now. I slowly approached the bloody axe and removed my gloves. George, that'll contaminate the scene. Look, do you want the complete story or not? Jonah let out a deep sigh. He closed the blinds and kept a close eye on the door. Carefully, I touched the tip of the axe. A jolt of electricity crawled up my fingers. Everything started to blur and spin, and echoes from the past loudly enveloped the room. Time froze and slowly moved backwards. I found myself standing in a perfectly decorated living room. White sofa, large TV, vases, and candles on top of a table at the center of the room. And so I watched, and watched, and watched. Brooke! Jonah slapped the shit out of me. I found myself on the floor covered in sweat, my hands shaking and my eyes wide. You alright? What did you see? I've never seen you like that. I got up, took a deep breath, and fixed myself. What happened? Officer Taylor busted in from the front door. Nothing, I nonchalantly replied. You were right. The father knocked out the mother and the girl, tied them here, and proceeded to hack them down with the axe. I'll write the details on paper. I always tell myself the world's greatest detective will always be just a detective. I can never persuade a judge if someone is guilty or not. I just state facts. I have this outstanding reputation of entering a crime scene and coming back out with an almost 98% accurate story of how shit went down. The other 2% would be something like that thing. That smiling creature that lurked in the tree, whispering to the father what to do. Halloween Forever. Written by N.M. Brown. There are only a dozen or more houses on our street, and only 2 of them have families with children. Chuck Murphy has twin boys named Aaron and Brian. They're 7 years old and creepily well behaved for kids their age. I imagine at one time there was a Mrs. Murphy, but she's certainly nowhere to be found now. Then there's us, the Hull family. My wife Bianca and I have a daughter, Caprice, who is a 10-year-old bundle of curiosity and intelligence. Our not-so-little girl, who just 6 years ago wanted to be a pink princess for Halloween, is going as a necromancer this year. One hooded cloak, dress, skull pendant, and dark lipstick later, and she was good to go. We normally went trick-or-treating together. Bianca is working late at the emergency veterinary clinic, and Caprice is more than old enough to walk at the front of the group. So I decide to hang back with Chuck and shoot the shit. His boys' costumes were very well put together. Aaron's wearing a vampire cloak, his hair's slicked back with what smells like baby oil, and 2 fangs were perched over his front canines. Brian's wrapped head to toe in tattered gauze, spending his evening as an Egyptian mummy. They receive quite the haul, with there being only a dozen or so houses on our street. Our weary-footed, sleepy-eyed children trudged back to their houses, bulging bags of candy dragging a bare trail through the dirt and leaves. It wasn't until 7 o'clock the next morning that we heard the screaming. Caprice flies down the stairs from her bedroom, eyes wild with alarm and concern. "What's going on?" she asked dismissively, running past her mother and I out the front door. "Wait!" I shout, to no avail. Chuck is screaming in agony in his front yard. 2 small, broken bodies lay before him. Brian, the smaller of the 2, looks like his body's centuries old. Tattered scraps of discarded gauze flap around his dust-infested face. Aaron's body is charred, still smoldering with acrid-smelling smoke. "Holy shit, Chuck!" I scream. "What the hell happened here?" "They're costumes," he wails. "By the time we tried to take it off this morning, he turned to fucking dust. His blood evaporated right in front of my hands, Jared." I kneel down to console him, trying to hide the sickening in my gut from the smell. My boy burst into flames the second he went out in the sun. I look to Caprice and Bianca, mortified and heartbroken. Caprice surprisingly steps forward. She places her hands on the dead bodies, impervious to the heat of Aaron's burning flesh. Her eyes turn white and begin to glow. She collapses in exhaustion as Brian's brittle bones rise and fall to the ground. "I tried, Daddy, but it's too late," she sobs. Thank you for listening. You can probably handle another horror story, right?